Hi, and welcome back. I'm Mike Quincy.
I'm Alex and Isaac.
I'm Michael Crossen.
So, Eagle Eye viewers and listeners of our podcast will notice a new face here. This is Michael Crossen, and he is a tire and automotive technician. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Mike.
So good to have you. Just give us a little bit of background, why you're here, why you're a car guy, and all that other good stuff.
Sure, yeah. In another life, I was a master certified Mercedes-Benz technician, and then I taught high school automotive shop, and post-secondary as well. Mm-hmm. So cars are kind of my life. Enjoyed as a hobby and as my livelihood.
And the teaching high school probably accounts for the gray in the beard.
A little bit of that, yes.
So Mercedes-Benz, I'm not quite sure that we belong in the same area as him because he's a little classier than
I suppose so.
Anyhow, anyway, good to have you.
Thank you very much.
We're going to get into one of the most popular cars on consumerreports.org. It's not a Tesla. It's not a Corvette. It's not even a pickup truck. It's the Honda CR-V. Yes, right. Believe it or not, it is one of the most popular cars that are searched on consumerreports.org, and we have a brand new one redesigned for 2023. This is a pivotal car for Honda, a real cornerstone model in their lineup. Mm-hmm. For years, really been a favorite among budget and practical-minded compact SUV buyers. The redesign is 3 inches longer, about a half inch wider, with a wheelbase that's about 1.6 inches longer. There's also going to be a stronger hybrid powertrain in the lineup, good for 204 horsepower. Standard safety features, including forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking with pedestrian detection, blind spot warning, and rear cross traffic warning. Mm-hmm. And we're going to get right into what we bought, which was an all-wheel drive EX model. We just got the 1.5 liter turbocharged four-cylinder, same 190 horsepower as the model that it replaced. The EPA fuel economy is 29 miles per gallon combined for the all-wheel drive model. Our all-wheel drive EX came in at $34,250. And Alex, I'm going to turn it to you to get us started. Okay. Give us your first impressions.
Yeah, so this redesign for 2023 is definitely a conservative redesign, right? They haven't really tried to do anything weird here or change anything too dramatically, right, compared to the CR-V that it replaces. And I think that's probably for the better. They're not going to, deter any existing CR-V customers, and especially when you compare this to like what Hyundai and Kia are doing with the Sportage and the Tucson, which, although they are still compact crossovers and they drive like one too, but you look at them and you're like, wow, these designs are pretty wild inside and out. And the CR-V is definitely a lot more understated and kind of just this simple design to it, especially in the look and just also what they're going for. And I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But in terms of the vehicle itself and just driving it in the first impressions, and I'm going to say this in the best possible way, but it's a car.
I don't think this isn't starting well. Okay.
It's a car that is going to blend into your life. And like I said, I mean that sincerely and as a good thing. It's not going to annoy you or be uncomfortable or do anything you're not expecting or just be weird in any kind of way, right? Some might say they're playing it safe, but I think this is actually something a lot of people want. And it's just going to work when you need it to. And historically, the CR-V has been reliable. Right in the past. So I think it has a lot of great things going for it. And it drives pretty well. I mean, none of these compact crossovers are trying to be anything sporty, right? That's not the point. But that being said, it drives well. I think the steering is well tuned. It's pretty responsive. The powertrain is smooth, works well in the background. And honestly, I was more impressed with the driving experience in the CR-V than I was with the smaller HR-V that we recently tested.
Right.
They're all kind of based on this Honda architecture that is underpinning the Civic. Started with the Civic and then HR-V and now CR-V. I get more of that like fun to drive Civic DNA, in the CR-V than I did in the HR-V. It just feels like a more kind of light on its feet and engaging experience.
Mm-hmm. And Mike, you talked about your experience driving all of the generations of the CR-V, which is honestly something I don't think Alex and I have done.
Can't. Nope.
Yeah. Initially, I saw that this was the 6th generation CR-V since 1997, and I thought that was wild. I didn't think there were 6, but I went and looked, and sure enough, I looked at each body style. I said, I've driven that one, and sure enough, this is number 6. Mm-hmm. And I think to Alex's point, they haven't gone with a radical redesign. It's an evolution of one generation to the next, and I think this is a nice evolution. It's a little bit bigger, a little bit more refined, but there is a lot of carryover from the Civic,
which is not altogether bad.
No, I think it's good.
No.
I was able to get in the car and basically go. I didn't need to read anything. I didn't need to have a lesson. I was able to get in and go, and I was able to figure things out as I was driving, which I sort of enjoy. Just like to find those things, and there's knobs and buttons that you can actually access without really even having to take your eyes off.
Right.
Once you learn where they are, you can kind of just reach out. You feel, yep, I got the button. I can press that to advance the track, on whatever I'm listening to, and it's great. It's easy to use, and I think intuitive.
Right, and you said something really interesting in our pre-production meeting. You compared it sort of to the new Acura Integra in terms of the simplicity of the controls.
Absolutely.
And we were seeing that with the HRV
Yep.
and the new Civic, and that's why I'm bringing up, that it's not a bad thing that they're not going completely crazy. You don't have to go into a screen to like do an adjustment to the lumbar for the seat or something crazy like that.
And that's part of why it's not going to annoy you it just works the way you expect. And I would say they've got all the basics right with this car, right? And some of their other products that we've tested recently too, but just in terms of comfort and noise and drivability, all these things, right? It kind of hits on all of those fundamentals that a good car needs to have, and they kind of knock all those out of the park, in my opinion.
So what I thought was interesting, or maybe just kind of odd with this new CR-V, is that I found out that a moonroof, heated seats are standard for every trim line, which is not always.
Think there's a little bit of a caveat to why that is. It's because they got rid of the base model that was there before, right? Probably LX is what it was called,
right?
If you're following.
But I mean, but every car has an entry level model.
Right.
And whether you call it the LX or the EX, it's the cheapest one in the lineup.
Right.
And it's kind of loaded with these sort of high-end features. At least that's what I would. I mean, heated seat. You don't get heated seats in every car. But what was weird to me was we get a super plain plastic steering wheel.
That is.
Which was like, wait a minute, I've got all these kind of luxury features and this kind of lousy feeling steering wheel. That I didn't understand at all.
Yeah, I think you're always gonna have some trade-offs, and the heated seats were nice. I really did appreciate that. The word I wrote down here in my notes was durable. Nothing really felt luxurious inside, but it felt like it was sturdy, secure, and was going to last a long time. And plastics are going to do that.
Right. I mean, but I mean, even some of your basic, like a Hyundai Elantra, is probably going to have a wrap on the steering. Maybe it's not genuine leather. Maybe it's synthetic leather, something. But it's those items that you're touching every day when you're getting in the car. Whether
your
it's
main
the door
input
pull,
to the car,
or again the steering wheel, the controls that you're always fiddling with should have a nice touch to them. That's why I was just, I don't want to say appalled, but I was like, really, a plastic steering wheel?
It's a little disappointing. It's actually funny you say that, because when I was going through the logbook notes and filling it all out, that was, if I had to complain about one thing, it actually was that. Just because, like I said, you're touching it all the time. It's probably better than some of the urethane or plastic wheels that I've seen in some other, like, at least you don't have the like flashing line around the edge or anything like that. Like, it was okay as far as those types of wheels go, but a leather wrapped or at least synthetic wrap would be nice.
And you can get higher end CRVs
absolutely.
with leather, with a leather wrap, and you can go all kinds of fancy on that and stuff like that. So you fit in okay. You like the way it drives?
Yeah, I thought seating position was great. Access to the vehicle seemed to be really good. I'm 6'1". I was able to adjust the seat. I didn't want any more headroom or any more leg room or anything like that. And then actually, I drove it home last night. I called up my parents and said, "Hey, I got a car. Let's go to dinner." So I put 2 other adults in the vehicle, and
they were hoping for a Tesla. Come on,
I don't know about that. They were very happy with it. I put my father in the back seat, and he's tall as well. And I was like, "Hey, you have enough room back there?" And he said, "Absolutely." So after all was said and done, when I got home, I got in behind my driver's seat where it was adjusted, and I had all kinds of room between my knees and the seat, and I don't think I'd have any trouble for several hours in the back of that car on a road trip or anything like that. Seemed to be plenty of room. And that rear door opens really wide to almost 90 degrees, I think, to the vehicle. So I imagine, loading in a child seat and getting a kid in there and things like that, probably going to happen pretty easily.
Alex, I think that's what you brought up. That there's a remarkable amount of room, of space utilization that Honda's figured out how to do with this car, right?
Yeah. Everything's nicely packaged. You don't, in terms of the driving position, just there's no intrusion issues or anything coming at you from either the door or the center console, right? It's all pretty simple and nothing kind of gets in your way. And just going back to the basics, Honda does a really good job of just making sure that you have the adjustments you need in terms of like the steering wheel and the seat relative to the gauges. So many cars that come through our fleet now that we're buying, you can't see the top of the giant display screen that they're giving you for an instrument cluster now because the steering wheel blocks it. And you just never have that issue in any of these Honda products, even some of the Acuras, right? So they do that really well. And yeah, like Mike said, the back seat is a huge highlight, I think, on this. And it has the built-in recline, so you can adjust that angle. It's kind of a pain to use. You got to use the thing up here on the shoulder. But yeah, I think, and that actually separates it a lot from the HRV, I think, that we also recently tested. Yep.
Now, so can we talk about the driver's seat? And I might be in the minority here. I find it really, really stiff.
Okay.
Only one, right? I'm the only one.
Didn't bother me.
That's okay.
Maybe it goes to some of that durability that Michael was talking about. But.
I think again in my notes, I think I used the word firm, but it wasn't uncomfortably so. I mean, it did have some cushion to it. You know, I don't know if you were in the car for 12 hours on a really long road trip, you might find yourself getting a little uncomfortable. But in the 150 so miles that I drove it, was pretty comfortable. But I do kind of understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, there's a term that I often think about with cars and certain features. I call it like a deal breaker. I don't think for me the seats are a deal breakers because I mean we've all driven cars where the seats are so bad you just can't wait to get out of them. I didn't feel that way about the CRV, but I just thought it was like stiffer than I was maybe anticipating, and would make me think I might want to get in if I was a buyer. I want to at least sit. I want to try out the leather seats. It's going to cost more,
and you got to get the hybrid to get the leather seats.
That's true. Which isn't a bad idea.
No. But I was happy to see at least that two-way lumbar here on the driver's seat on the base EX goes a long way, I think.
So Alex, you mentioned about the similarities of recent Honda designs, whether it's the Civic, the HRV, the CRV. I think a casual viewer or listener might confuse kind of the two, and they do have some similarities certainly in the styling, but you can point out other things where they're clearly different. Yeah,
and I think with the previous versions of the HRV and the CRV, there might have been a little bit more daylight, if you will, between them, more of an obvious choice, whether you wanted a bigger CRV or the smaller HRV, right? But the HRV with this recent redesign grew quite a bit. So I think it's just not as obvious which one you might choose. So Michael and I we put them both up on the lift just to kind of inspect the underside and the structure because you hear all this talk about platform sharing. So we just checked them out to see what was similar.
Yeah, with both vehicles in the air, you can definitely tell that they're of the same methodology. They do look very similar, in some ways shockingly similar between the two. There are some definitely different components and things like that used. And size-wise, some things are different as well, wheelbase and things like that. But there's probably going to be some shared components, from vehicle to vehicle, and definitely that design ideology. You can tell that probably some of the same engineers, or at least came out of a meeting and they kind of split a little bit and went to go design each of their vehicles. But
well, Honda has a well-deserved reputation for pretty durable, reliable vehicles. I'm sure they're not going to leave it up to chance. I mean, the CRV is competing with the Ford Escape, the Hyundai Tucson, the Toyota RAV4, the Subaru Forester. I mean, this is a very, very competitive segment. I know Honda's got a lot on the line with this. They can't. I mean, it's like they can't mess it up.
Right.
So I think we're going to be really interested to see how this car kind of pans out in our testing. Definitely check back to consumerreports.org. We're going to have a first drive up soon and videos and stuff like that. So check out consumerreports.org for more information on the CRV, as well as all those other competing small SUVs. Which brings us to our question. We love your questions. Keep them coming. 30-second videos, text. Send them all to talkingcars@icloud.com. That's talkingcars@icloud.com. We've got one coming from Paul, who writes, catalytic converter theft is a huge problem. I know from personal experience, as the catalytic converter was stolen off my C-Class motorhome on a Ford E450 chassis. Could owners or vehicle manufacturers do more to deter theft by providing better protection for catalytic converters? well, we're really, getting down to the brass tacks, although brass is not actually what they're after, is it?
Not so much, but the catalytic converter is full of precious metals. Platinum, palladium, rhodium are the three that come to the top of my mind. So they're worth money in scrap value. And the bigger the catalytic converter, the more of those materials are in there, so they are worth money. And like anything that's worth money, you do kind of need to protect it and secure it. So unfortunately, they sometimes are easy to take, especially if you can physically easily get underneath the vehicle. So trucks and SUVs can be prime candidates for that because you don't need a jack. You don't need anything other than whatever tools you're going to use to remove it from the vehicle. You can just kind of slide right under there, do what you got to do, and you've got a couple $100 to maybe $1,500, depending on the catalyst, that the thief has taken. Right. So it is a concern, and people have had 1, 2, 3 vehicles, in their driveway all hit in the same time, and that can be a financial stressor, certainly. And then, of course, you're trying to deal with transportation and getting it fixed and things like that. So as far as what owners can do, certainly if you have a garage, park in the garage. Then they have to break and enter, your garage or your house. But they do make guards and shields and things like that. They do cost some money. In most cases, you're probably going to have to go to a shop to get those professionally installed. And then down the road, other servicing that might have to happen, you might have to take those off. So that adds a little bit of complexity to servicing. But here in Connecticut, they actually just passed a law to make them harder to sell. So if you have something that's worth money, but it becomes difficult to turn it into money, that should help stem the theft as well. And the big one there's actually 6 new rules, but the big one is you have to provide your photo ID, and they will only pay you with a check that gets mailed to you. So it's not cash the same day. So hopefully that can stem some of those thefts as well.
And one of the most hit models seems to be like the Toyota Prius.
Yep.
And I noticed that on Toyota's website, when you go to configure a Prius and you go to the accessories section of the configurator, they sell a actual guard for their Prius.
Fascinating and pretty telling. And I don't think I've seen any other OEM selling them, or at least as an accessory, right? And the other vehicles that are kind of more at risk would be pickup trucks, just generally speaking, right? Or any vehicle that's higher up off the ground that's easier to just slide underneath without having to jack anything up or do anything, special.
Right. And Mike, you looked up a couple of the aftermarket companies that are selling them.
Yeah, there's a lot of different solutions, and if you put in your own vehicle, you'll see different solutions for that. Some are cages that kind of encircle the catalyst. Some are plates and panels that bolt to subframes and other pieces like that. So it's going to vary depending on the model and what kind of room you have under there and things like that. Or if you have any other accessories on the vehicle, it might be more difficult or easier depending on what's going on there. Right. But it's certainly something to think about as an owner of a vehicle. Where am I parking? Is it well lit? Maybe it's a case for having cameras in your driveway or things like that, or choosing the lot that has an attendee versus street parking or something like that, where maybe there's some eyes on your vehicle that might help deter theft of your vehicle. Unfortunately, that means maybe someone else's vehicle is going to get hit, but oftentimes with vehicle security, that's kind of how it goes, whether it's wheel locks or the steering wheel locks and things like that.
Right. And I remember years ago, there was a raft of thefts for headlights for Nissan Maximas. They were cost a lot to replace, and they were easy to pop out.
Wow.
And it just seems how word gets out, which components are valuable and easy to steal.
Interesting. You just take the whole headlight housing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
So that's what we've got, Paul. Definitely is an issue. You're not alone. A lot of people get these precious metals off their catalytic converters stolen. Sorry to hear about it. I'm sure we're going to have more about this going forward and how other manufacturers are going to deal with trying to keep their customers' vehicles safe. But that's going to about do it for this episode, which was produced by super producer Dave Abrams and, of course, edited by Anatoly the Great Shumsky. As always, check the show notes for more information on the vehicles and topics we discussed. Just a reminder, keep your questions coming, talkingcars@icloud.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.